Welcome everybody to today's Facebook Live. Welcome from Onion Creek in Austin, Texas. This is one of my favorite places to be because this is where I do so much of my meditation. It is amazing, especially when I'm doing the Wim Hof in the winter. But today, I have something that I want to talk about, and I want to talk about it for a reason. It isn't meant to offend people. It isn't meant to cause hysteria. It is meant to broadcast a message that comes directly from what I get from working with men and coaching men. If you're interested in things like this, or if you're watching this on YouTube, this is a live stream on Facebook. You can follow me on Facebook. I am not accepting friend requests from people I don't know or people that I don't work with. But you can follow me and interact with me and message me and all that sort of stuff. And the different boards and podcasts that I belong to are down below. But what I want to talk about is consent, assault, and rape. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because yesterday I got a message from a guy that I know, and men aren't comfortable talking about this, and unfortunately we've made it very difficult to be able to talk on the real about, you know, how you can be sexual or how you can be a man or how you can do all these different things. I mean, no doubt, you know, if a man brings that up, he's in, like this video, you're very likely to get some flack from some certain people causing hysteria and all this sort of different stuff about it. But he messaged me a question, and some of this question may offend some of you, but I appreciate questions like this because, again, we need to be able to talk about it. But he said, I'm asking for a friend, and as I spoke to him more about it, I actually believe he was. I have not done this, but my friend was saying, and I disagree with him, but he was saying that if you are forceful with a woman, and even if she says no, and she doesn't like it in a sexual situation, and you continue to force that situation, that, and it's not violent, you're not hitting her or anything, then that's not rape. And I said, and the guy said to me, he's like, I disagree with this, what do you say? And I said, that is the definition of what rape is. That is a criminal act. That is something that is unwelcoming. And the absolute definition of it, and why is it the definition of it? Because somebody is saying no, they do not want to do this. This is a emphatic line that they continue to cross, and even during the act of sex and so on, it continues to be no, and they continue to be detached and so on. This is not good. And the interesting thing about this, and the reason why I want to bring this up, and before I get into it, I just want to tell you a little bit of my history if you guys don't know. I've been a dating coach for 10 years. I've been a men's coach for longer than that. I also have worked with people in drug and alcohol addiction for over 20 years. And I've spent thousands of hours logged working with people that have to do with things like that happen on the street when you are a drug addict. And I've had them happen to myself. In fact, my sex life started out with rape with my first girlfriend that I'd only had sex maybe 5 times in my life. And I saw these guys hanging out where she was at, and I went across the street, and as soon as I did that, they abducted her. They gang raped her and tortured her for 5 hours. I didn't know what had happened. It was a horrible thing, and it totally rocked my perspective on sex and sexuality for many years. As well as that, myself having my own struggles with addiction, and a lot of stuff has happened to me that has to do with sex and humiliation on the street and so on. However, all of that being said, does not make something that I might say that's offensive, or if you're in pain or whatever, it does not make it better. You know, you're more than happy to disagree with me and so on. I'm just saying that because I have a lot of experience with it. And I have a lot of experience working with people, and if people do have a charged idea on either side of this, on the extreme feminist side of, you know, consent or assault or rape and these things, get involved with people that have gone through it and help them. Do not bitch online about it and think that's going to change things. I realize that the idea is that we're going to politically and socially change people. That doesn't work. I've been invited on many forums by many people. I'll leave out the names of them. And as soon as I say something that is pro-male, I get jumped on, or whatever. As soon as I say something that's myself, that is interpreted as pro-male, it's seen as an attack on everything that they believe, and it loses. And the sad part of it is literally thousands of hours working with people that have had trauma and sexual assault and all that different stuff, okay? So the reason why I bring this up is because men feel that they cannot talk about this. And the fact of the matter is that it's not a literal thing that we can break down. Consent is something that is very, very difficult to see, to feel, to sense, but once somebody is actually sexually active and expressing themselves for real, you know, and being themselves and not hiding behind an image and so on, it's a very clear thing to be seen. And guys ask this over and over again. And this guy who asked me was afraid to ask me. The reason why he was afraid to ask me, because if you bring up anything sexual as a man in today's society, especially publicly, man, you get reamed for it. You get labeled for it, when this guy honestly didn't know and wanted to make the best decision. So starting out, let's just say that no man that I know wants to assault or cause harm to a woman. No man wants to hurt a woman. That is not his agenda. He is not somebody who is subscribed to this undertone of society called rape culture to attack women and think that that's a great thing. I know damaged men. I know men that have been hurt by women, that become confused, that do not understand how to deal with the pain of whatever they went through, whether it was a divorce or being, assaulted in some way or whatever, going through some sort of pain and confusion, that absolutely do start to side with that line of objectification of women and so on. But I do not know a man that starts out that way. Just as well as I do not know a woman who starts out that way, that wants to harm a man, that wants to empower herself by putting man or masculinity down and so on. But I do know damaged women, women that have been stepped on, women that have been screwed over, that do think that. And I think that presents an interesting problem. Men and women, if you've been hurt, heal yourself. Otherwise, no matter what message you're putting out there, it will continue to cause harm. That all being said, let's get into consent. Now, consent's an interesting thing. We hear it over and over again from people. We hear how it's defined. If a woman says no, you stop. If a woman says yes, then you continue. The interesting thing about this is, to any sexually active man, and this is coming from experience, so hear me out on this, and it's not only coming from my experience, it's coming from literally thousands of men that I've worked with in a community setting that continue to dialogue this and are not bad men. Some of these are married men, whatever. They're great guys that that their end goal is to be sexual and be fulfilled with women, whether they take a road where they're having multiple partners and being single, or they're married and in a relationship. That this running dialogue has opened up, a very clear message of what we would consider consent. The problem is a lot of women may say, like, let's say we're getting hot and heavy, we're in a situation, maybe we're on a date, and the woman says, I'm not going to have sex with you. I'm not going to have sex with you. This isn't to have sex. This isn't to hook up. We hear this a lot on online dating apps, and people write that all the time. And then we hear from this men's side of things, and these are guys groups, and you first need to understand that. If you think there's a problem with what is being said in a men's group, do not take a men's group away from men. Do not demonize men fraternizing alone in some form of secrecy as an attack against anything. That is not the solution. Men do need to dialogue. There are certain things that I cannot put out publicly that I think, because it would be stupid, because I'd be jumping the gun, because I'd be too emotional, because I don't know, because I'm confused, and I need a private group of people to talk to. Do not take that away from men. Do not ever take that away from men or women. You need that. You need those things. But here's the interesting thing, is these guys will say, it's like, well, in these moments where a woman is saying, online especially, like, I don't sleep with men, they're the easiest women to sleep with. Now, that may be true, but to a guy that has zero experience with sex, what does that mean? That means women are liars. To a guy that has experience with sex, what does that mean? It means that women are confused about sex. They don't want to be, they're confused about what people might interpret about them sexually. They don't want to be misinterpreted. They don't want to be taken advantage of, and they don't want this to happen. But if you were to alleviate those fears, then potentially they may have sex. And I don't want to get into the details of that, but from my groups, from myself, that is true. If a woman does say that, it doesn't mean that she deserves disrespect. It means that she has a bigger wallet because she's been screwed over more. So, that all being said, if you're making out with a girl, and this is where it gets weird, especially with legal stuff, and I don't know all the details of the California law that was passed for college students, but she had to say yes 3 times, I believe, in order for consent to be established. Look, this is ridiculous. I get the attempt of it. I get that a lot of women said or feel that it's a good voice for them, but this is not how sex works. This is not the truth. And because it is not the truth, it will confuse people more. And not only will it confuse people more, but those men who are damaged will get more and more angry and see that it is a war against them. And the biggest problem is that men and women are not at war. Men and women are different. They're supposed to be different, just like I am an individual and I'm different than you, and that's how we gain our value. But in order to complete my fulfillment as a man, or your fulfillment as a woman, and obviously I'm not a woman, but hey, hormones and surgeries might be able to change that. But in order to complete it, to complete my message of being a man, I need to meld with women. Okay, it doesn't mean I need to be at war with them. I need to see that I'm different, see that she is different, and start to mix and change into a new thing. In fact, that's what sex is. Two different things come together and make a new thing. All right, whether that's an emotion, a baby, a feeling, a situation, a new venture in life, but they make a new thing. That is the essence of the sexual life. So here's the thing. We're kissing a girl and she says no. This happens all the time, and it happens all the time. We can pinpoint it in escalation, especially through my groups. You may not care about this, but if you're a single guy, you do. Is it happens when she starts to get carried away and you press harder. As soon as that happens, 90% of the time, maybe more than that, maybe 95% of the time, she will say, stop, wait, you don't know me, I don't know what's happening, this isn't right, I never do this, and she says all these things. She is not lying to you, all right? She is not saying something that is a fabrication of the war against men, or, you know, whatever the fuck you want to call it. She is saying no, because that's all she knows how to say. Now, men who have been sexual know that that doesn't mean we need to stop and I don't want to have sex with you. What it means is we need to stop for now and we need to make this comfortable. We need to make sure that she is an individual. We need to make sure that her expression is being felt and turned on by and all these different things. And it's so easy to do. And if we're talking about escalation, it's so simple to make that phenomenon happen. Watch the Sexual Life podcast. There will be a link down below. We talk about this all the time. There are like 200 episodes on there, and probably 50 of them have to do with this exact thing that will detail, pinpoint, tell you how to do this, and there's PDFs that you can download on that. But that all being said, excuse me, man, I was coughing so much I couldn't even say excuse me properly. But the thing is if we ask women about this, they will say that means stop. They will say that we are disrespecting them. If we ask women that aren't willing to engage in the truth and the timeline of what happens sexually, or we're not allowing men to fraternize and speak amongst each other to learn more about how to be a better man without the motive of being an asshole, if we ask women about that just on the fly, they'll say, no, you stop there, you stop, you respect me. But again, what do we know from experience? Those women that have said yes after they've, said no, wait, let's stop, and the guy comforts them and all that sort of stuff and turns them on in the proper way and gets them aroused, they're not feeling violated at all, okay? This is a very important distinction. If we were to talk to those women, especially specifically about that situation, it, would be agreed upon that this was the right thing to do. At the time, she felt uncomfortable. It means no, let's stop, let's wait, let's get comfortable, which is a very quick thing. It's not, I'm talking about it's not dialogue, okay, and I'll get to that in a second. I'm talking about 10, 20, 30 seconds of time passing that goes from that, no, wait, let's stop, this isn't right, I don't do this with other people, we barely know each other, and all these different things that will be said when we're in that sort of fear, right? And it only takes a short amount of time to alleviate that. So, this brings us to the other thing, is that when we talk about consent, it's like, well, we need a yes, we need a definitive yes. We don't want to step on anybody's toes. When I was a younger man, especially because my first girlfriend was assaulted and raped, and it was such a just horrible experience. I did not have sex with anybody for 3 years after that. I was confused in so many different ways, and it took me a long time to come to peace with those types of things. And the guys didn't get caught. That was the best thing until 16 years later, So when they asked me to be involved in it, I was like, hey, it's all her choice of whatever she wants to do. I'm staying out of it. But the thing is that the reason why we can't go into a literal version of consent, especially with somebody who isn't that sexually experienced, okay, and let's put a bit of a weight on this. They haven't had relationships that are long-term and meaningful. They haven't had sex, well, at least with the same partner, a ton of times. They don't have they're still confused about how they get turned on. They're still confused about what gets them turned on or what they like, which is a very long road. This isn't degrading anybody for that. That's hard to determine. I'm somebody that owns a website and multiple coaching programs called The Sexual Life, and I work with men constantly 7 days a week on this for many, many hours, and it can be confusing for myself as well as guys in my group, right? So, but people who are unaware of that, the literal answers of no, those feelings of panic that are natural that come into play with sex, are going to happen. All right? They're going to happen. If we start thinking that we can logically process, certain choices when our mind is turned on and our hormones are flowing and our sexual mind is activated, then we are setting ourselves up for a trap. Once again, we're creating more damaged women and more damaged men, broadcasting a message of basically neutering sex or making sex something that is, clinical and not an emotional or true expression of yourself. Rather, well, anyway, you get what I'm saying. We are taking that choice away, and we're giving them the options for other choices. It's not the true story of what happens sexually. Okay? And so when we move into things like the ideas of rape culture, and I want to get to both of these things, of the extremist feminist view and the extremist men's rights view, when we get to these things, neither of these are true. All right? Neither of these are what really happens when we are talking about sex and sexuality. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants this. And I know a lot of women may hear from men, and the men's rights scene, or a lot of the extremist stuff, like whatever you might hear with the red pill, or the men go their own way groups, or the pickup groups. These things are crazy, and I've worked within those industries, but never had a message of those things, and always been a very, sexual person and promoting sex and promoting the idea of it, hence this video. But what this is not what anybody wants. I know it may seem that men want to control women. And I know it may seem that men want to dominate women. It may seem that men want to put down women. It may seem that men want to harm them. But again, now I can't speak for everybody of those different factions or those extremist men's rights groups. But to me, what we see them when they come through my programs like TSL, and they get to know and they get to open up and they get to examine themselves and they get to learn to be responsible for themselves, what ends up happening is they tend to start relaxing. I see your comment. I can't read it right now because I'm a little bit far from the phone that's broadcasting this, but I'll check it out later and get back to you. But what the interesting thing is that most of these men want connection. Most of these men want a good feeling. Now, I will tell you from a men's perspective, and again from having groups of men that are sexually active and that are doing this in what I consider a healthy way, they do like that sense of domination. They do like that sense of control, but only in specific moments, and only in moments where it is consensual, as we say. Only in moments where it's reciprocal, only in moments where it's going on. But for a man to think that carries over into the essence of their entire life, and that they're going to get in fights with people in the grocery store when they cut in front of a line because they need to insert their dominance, or they need to be alpha to a woman when she tells them to. What always gets told to me, it's like, man, pick up your dirty clothes. And I never want to pick up my dirty clothes. And my wife is saying, Jesus, come on, Steve, pick up your dirty clothes. How did you live without me? And I go, man, I'm not doing that. And I start thinking that that's my identification of a man. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Everybody, the more you get involved with sex and it starts to be an exchange of man and woman, and this back and forth of feeling her feeling me feeling her, and going back and forth and us defining each other, all that stuff starts to chill out. All that stuff starts to relax. Okay? You are not going to redefine your masculinity by putting somebody else down, especially people that you don't know. And especially, this is the worst thing about a lot of these groups, is they assert their alphaness only with people online and people that they never meet. First off, as it was said on one of our Sunday calls, the whole alpha male definition has caused more harm than good. And then we get into the whole biological thing. I gave a speech on it in the 2014 21 convention about it, and there's a lot of different stuff that's broken down on it. But the whole over definition of men and women and what makes us men and women, Jesus Christ, man, it's produced a lot of harm. Why? Because there's guys talking about it without experience. And when we get into the extremist feminist side of it, now feminism can be great. I'm all for men and women, getting their rights set, so they don't get taken advantage by a society. I'm a man. I've had some really, really shitty experiences when it comes to custody, when it comes to child support, when it comes to, false rape accusations, false abuse accusations. I've had a lot of shitty experiences. How do you solve that? You don't solve about it by bitching about it online. You don't solve about it by causing hysteria. You don't solve it by it being so extreme that you can't actually dialogue with somebody. These are all forms of gossip and forms of my pain coming out saying, hear me, hear me, hear me. How we solve that is solve it politically if you need to with the courts. Okay, solve it with the laws through how you vote or how you propose different things, or maybe you should become a politician. Or better yet, why don't you solve it by actually working with people directly who are victims of this rather than starting this big movement of just making people mad. That's how you become an asshole. And being an asshole is never good, all right? It only serves your benefit, your anger, and all this other confusion that you have. An angry person can never be wrong, and that's pretty shitty. And so on this extremist feminist group, which is side, you know, where we see the equivalent of that with all the men's rights shit, we see the same thing, a shutting down of dialogue. That if a man were to wonder about sex, if he were to wonder about what rough sex is, what being dominant is, how to dirty talk, if he were to wonder about rape fantasies, if he were to wonder about being a little bit more dominant and controlling, he can't ask that, because if he does that, you're shunned publicly. You're said to be worse than what you really are. And man, I can tell you a story about this that was very, very close to me, but you're nullified, you're muted. You only have one option. You can either fight against that extremist woman side, or you can become passive and a part of that extremist woman side and get your male definition built by women who, you know, most likely are angry and wanting to control things. That's not good. You need to learn individually what it is that defines you, and especially sexually. Now, I'll say for myself, this is an interesting thing. I'll get personally here for a little bit. I know I tend to talk a lot, and it's actually Wednesday, and Wednesday nights I do about 5 hours of recording for my podcast videos, which, again, you can find out down below if you like it. For dating and sex stuff, there's one for men's development. There's another. Hopefully this one isn't going too crazy with the audio, but it's beautiful being in nature. But for myself, like I said, when I was 18 years old, I was a virgin. I meet a girl, we start dating, we have sex. You know, we have sex, it's great. We have sex in all these different ways. I go crazy with it. In fact, one of the first times we had sex, we had group sex. It was nuts. It was nuts. I was so happy. I was so happy that finally I'd done it. And I made a whole bunch of dumb decisions in that because I'd never had experience in it. Like, you know, how you choose somebody, how you choose a girlfriend or whatever. But it was so great to feel this feeling. After about 5 or 6 times of having sex with her, what happens? We're at a gas station. There's some guys fixing their car. I see them. Actually, man, there's so much confusion about this. I don't want to get into the details of it, but I left. As soon as I left, those guys robbed her. They held her at gunpoint. They assaulted her and kidnapped her, and it was a horrible experience. And it was for hours. It was for 5 or 6 hours. Threw her out of a moving car. She had no clothes, and she was picked up in a city 25 miles away. And I heard about all this, and the whole night we were looking for her. We didn't know what had happened. You know, where is she? Where is she? Where is she? We're going to. Eventually, we get to the point where we still hear nothing. About 5 or 6 hours later, we hear a rumor that some cops had dropped her off to, you know, from that city 25 miles away to the local police, and it was just this crazy thing. And you know, eventually, you know, 10 hours after that, after she had to go to the hospital, she's able to contact us, and I see her, and we talk. And the first thing that she wants to do is have sex. She wants to feel comfortable sexually again. All right, we talk about this actually on our calls a lot. You know, this traumatic bonding. Okay, this is a pretty awesome concept. My friend Adam came up with it. Adam Goodson, great coach. You should check him out. But he was talking about traumatic bonding and how a lot of the times we want to bond. Now, I don't want to say there's anything wrong with this, especially in this situation, because nobody knows what to do. And so we have sex. She had gotten a bunch of STDs. She had passed them on to me when we had sex, even though we were using condoms and so on. But the thing is that we continue to go to counseling. We continue to stay sexually active. And we go through this piece that we find that we unify on sexually. Well, she is tremendously confused, and I am also somewhat confused, or I'm very confused about it, but she obviously more so. So the interesting thing happens is she starts to tell me what had happened during that, and she started to have sex in different ways during that, and it messed me up. And maybe it was just to a mild degree that she was having some of this, but to me it exploded in my mind. Eventually we break up. I don't have sex with anybody. So then fast forward to when I'm 24, 25 years old, and I start being sexually active again. And I remember a girl, I had hooked up with her, we worked together. She put the moves on me. Oh man, I was so lucky. It was a great experience. There was so much that was beautiful about this woman. I remember it so vividly, and just being around a naked body, and I hadn't been around many at that time. And she says, "Choke me." And I go, oh my God, I've only seen this in pornography. And back then, pornography was a little bit different. It wasn't as available as it is now. And we're talking, I'm 39 now, so, 15 years ago. So I choke her. And I don't know, and she gets more turned on, and she likes it, and I like it more. And then she says, slap me. And so I don't know what to do, and I slap her. But I like this. This felt good. And she says, fuck me harder. So I try and fuck her harder. In the whole midst of this, I can't handle it. It's too much arousal. She's telling me all these things that I've seen in pornography that I've never experienced. And all of a sudden, now I'm liking them, and I'm starting to do the things that these people that I hated, that had raped my ex-girlfriend, that I'm doing what they had done. Not only am I doing what they had done, but I'm enjoying it. Oh my God, I must be this horrible person. From that moment on, I remember I would have a girlfriend that I had sex in one way with, and then these other girls that I would meet and hook up with that didn't happen much because I wasn't that good with women at the time, where I would do these things and I would take out this evil side to me. What I started to realize when I started to get involved in the seduction community, and especially being a dating coach, was that so many of men like this and so many women like this, that this wasn't a part of rape culture, this wasn't a part of rape or a sexual assault or an evil side of me, but what I realized was that everybody liked this in the right time and place. And what I also realized that this was so much dependent upon our sexual states and arousal happening, and I wouldn't even say arousal, because arousal is the process of getting to sex, and then the sexual state is a completely different world, but in that part of arousal, our minds and behaviors change. In that normal behavior, and some people may not like being choked, some people may not like being fish hooked or slapped or have their ass slapped, or they might not like degradation on either side of both men and women. They may not like being tied up, they may not like being whipped, they may not like pain, but a lot of people do, and I guarantee you every single person likes at least one of those things happening, whether they impose it or they take it. And see, we don't have that dialogue. We are afraid to have that dialogue. We are afraid to have it because we hear over and over, if we listen to these definitions of consent that are made by politicians who aren't familiar with the process of sex or looking at how people have sex, or these social movements that are coming from damage, that are coming from people's pain. The men's movement, the women's movement, you guys are the same fucking thing. You're just coming at it from different angles, but both of you dependent upon detachment and control and definition of the others to empower yourselves. What a horrible thing, because what I get, and we'll even go to that traumatic bonding thing, because when Adam brought it up, I was like, Jesus Christ. Traumatic bonding. It could be men all bonding together talking shit on women, or women all bonding together talking shit on men, or it can be people dysfunctionally coming together through sex, and maybe some of you guys may have experienced this. This was definitely my story, is that I was in so much pain that sex alleviated that and allowed me to express in different ways, and I became so passionate about it. And man, I wish there was more people defining it, because eventually what happened to me was I was able to work through a lot of those different things. I was able to work through a lot of the different anger and sadness and confusion and pain that I had sexually, that, you know, issues that had to do with my family life growing up, issues that had to do with sexual assault issues. And this is also another thing for me, when I was on the streets and doing a lot of drugs and stuff like that, I had a lot of bad sexual stuff happen to me, like really shitty things. To me, they didn't affect me that much. To other people, they do. That doesn't negate the process, because again, my hangnail hurts worse than your broken leg. We have to deal with our pain and how we interpret it. Other forms of humiliation or other forms of loss or whatever affected me in great ways. But the thing is that when it comes down to that sort of stuff, man, we can't see that we have the answer through controlling other people. Man, I'll wrap this up. There's a whole bunch to it. There's a lot of dialogue to it. And if you want to continue the dialogue, you can follow me on my groups. You can listen to my podcasts and all that sort of stuff. We have a lot that is spoken about this. We talk about it a lot. One of the greatest things a guy can do is be a part of a group that isn't just some online, fanboy thing, but actually get on the phone like we do on Wednesday, like we do on Thursday, like we do on Saturday, like we do on Sunday, for many, many hours. We have over 40 hours now of calls a week where we as a group unify as men. And I'm on most of those calls. I'm on probably about 20 of them, 20 hours of it. So that's one of the best things you can do. We're the only group in the world that also does this. But that all being said, if you are a man and you want to control women, that's not what it's about. We have to get that pain out. If you're not in pain, and a lot of people get pissed off about that, then man, just get into an open dialogue of men who have the wisdom. Chase the wisdom. Don't chase the reaction. Don't chase the hysteria. Don't think that arguing or defining other people or controlling them is the way to go. We have to bond, we have to communicate, we have to do all these different things. And before we spin this into some political message, because it's not, it's specifically a message about sex, is that the only way you're going to become the man that you want to be is to merge and bond with the femininity that will complete you. And the same goes for women. We need to come together as men and women. We need to stop drawing these lines of what these definitions of the sex act, the definition of all these different things, and get into the dialogue of what really happens. That is so important. That is my message. That is absolutely my passion. I know a lot of you guys are on here, you know, that you're just friends with me, or maybe you're friends with me through a family scenario or through jiu-jitsu, or maybe you do know me through the coaching industry and you don't know exactly what my take is. That's what it is. I'll put the links down below to get more involved with our stuff. Sexual Life Podcast, that's really for men. I wanted you to know more about dating. There's a lot of good stuff there. The Daily Awesome is attached to our Austin Men's Development, which and Austin Men's Development is more about men's development, all the different things that guys tend to care about when they come together, which is like fitness and mentality and business, entrepreneurship, and of course, you know, relationships and those things. And then of course, my live personal feeds, which I'm trying to do here every day, 3 podcasts a day, 7 days a week. We don't stop. Get involved with the dialogue. A butterfly just went by me. That's a good cue to go. Talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll get to all your comments as soon as this video is done. All right, later.